Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to make a wrist corsage with dendrobium orchids. Wrist corsages are incredibly popular and commonly used during weddings, proms, graduation, and other events. I'm going to be using purple dendrobium orchids. As you see, I have a couple of stems here. I'm also going to need some greenery, and for this purpose today I'm going to be using Israeli rascus. They are very elegant and shiny leaves that will look beautiful in a corsage, as well as some filler. I'm using linoleum and some baby's breath. We'll also need our instruments. So we're going to need some floral scissors, some scissors for the ribbon, and some needle nose pliers to help us with the wire. I also have quite a few wires here. These are 24 gauge, so they're fairly thin and very flexible, but durable. I also have some corsage bands, and these will go around your wrist, and they will help secure the corsage to your wrist. These can be found at craft stores as well as floral supply stores. And they're fairly inexpensive, and you get quite a few wristbands in a package. That way you can make quite a few corsages if you are preparing them for a big event and for many people. Additionally, we have some floral tape and some gems. These come pre-wired. Again, you can find these at craft stores, and these will add just a shimmering touch to your corsage if that is something that you want to include. So to begin, we are going to start by preparing the wire. Usually I take a handful of wires and I'm going to cut them into thirds. This is approximately 10 to 12 centimeters. You want to make sure that the piece is not overly long so that you are wasting the wire, but not short so that you are struggling with working with the corsage. So it's good to cut it in threes. Next, I'm going to take a stem of dendrobium orchids. I'm going to quickly inspect the flowers and make sure that I'm picking the freshest and the prettiest of the flowers. I'm going to pick approximately 6 flowers off of this stem, and it just so happens there are 6 heads. I'm also going to take the buds, and usually people will discard the buds because they don't offer very much to the corsage, but I believe they make it look very natural and quite beautiful. So it's a nice touch and a great way to ensure that you are not wasting the stem. So an essential part of making a corsage is using the wire to secure the flowers. You want to use a wire, it's absolutely essential. You do not want the natural stem of your flower to snap, to go missing. You want to ensure that you are using a wire. This will add another layer of security, especially when you are going to an event where there's lots of movement and lots of dancing. The flowers will otherwise break and become missing. So I am taking a cluster of buds. Here I have 3. I am simply wrapping the wire around the stems, and I will be securing it using some floral tape. This will simply ensure that none of these flowers will go missing. Next, I'm going to do this exact process for the flowers, but instead of wrapping around the stem, I am going to pierce and hook the wire through the neck of the flower. Don't worry, this will not damage the flower, this will not cause it to brown, this will not cause it to wilt. Orchids are incredibly durable without water, so you do not have to worry about it. Once again, I am hooking it through the neck of the flower and I'm securing it with floral tape. And I'm going to be doing this for each and every one of these flowers, so you can watch me repeat the motion in case you missed it. As you see here, I'm doing it with every single one of these flowers. Take your time, especially if you're a beginner. It is better to be cautious and take your time and learn the motions instead of rush and possibly damage a flower. So take your time, and with more expertise, you'll be able to do it quicker, faster, more efficiently, especially since these are the starting steps. So this is essentially the skeleton of your corsage. So take your time, be careful, and complete this part. I know it might be a bit nuisanced and time consuming, but it's well worth it once you start assembling your corsage. So carry on with a corsage. carry on assembling it and piercing the heads and hooking it through. Do it for each and every one. And after this, we are going to move on to the next step. Once again, the wire is very important, not only because of the added security, but also because the wire is very flexible. So when you are assembling your corsage, or even during the evening once the corsage is assembled, you'll be able to adjust the flowers, move them around without worrying about them breaking, without worrying about the necks snapping or stems coming off or out. So this is incredibly good and efficient. As you can see, they're incredibly flexible. You can move them in every direction. And this freedom of movement will allow you to have the most liberty with assembling your corsage. So once this part is finished, you're going to move on to the leaves. I am using Israeli ruscus. This is a very durable leaf. Leaf is incredibly long lasting outside of water. It is very shiny, it's quite beautiful, and it will help create and transform your corsage. You're going to want to pick the leaves that are fitting, so you will need some big leaves. You'll also need a little bit smaller leaves, and we'll show you how this comes together. Once again, even with the leaves, you want to do the same hooking motion. So you take the leaf, you find the middle of the back of the leaf or the spine, and about halfway up from the stem, you want to hook it through and do the same thing. As you can see, the leaf is incredibly flexible, and you want the leaf to be flexible because this will allow you to assemble your corsage fairly easily. And the same principle applies, of course. You don't want the leaves to come out. You don't want the leaves to go missing. You don't want anything falling apart. So you want everything to be very, very sturdy. So I have about 6 leaves here. They're a bit similar in sizes, but there are some bigger leaves and there are some smaller leaves. And that's because you want to create a bit of dimension. You don't want them all to be large leaves because they'll just make the arrangement look bulky. And you want to have a bit smaller leaves, and that will create a more delicate effect. I will show you how that comes into play later. So as you see here, it's about halfway to maybe a little bit over a third above from the stem of the leaf. You don't want it to be pierced too low, because if it's pierced too low, it can rip, it can tear, and even more than that, it will not be as flexible. It will not allow quite a bit of flexibility the way it does when it is pierced at the perfect length, at the perfect height, rather. So as you see here, I'm taking some smaller leaves as well and fulfilling that hooking motion. Next, we're going to create our ribbon, and this is a very lovely touch to the corsage. This is what gives it that very delicate effect. As you can see here, the ribbon is very easy to do, and you don't have to worry about it. Even if it's a little bit messy, that's okay. So as you see here, I'm creating loops and bending and twisting. If you want to learn more about this specific motion, we do have videos here on YouTube about how to create ribbons. It's a larger ribbon, but it's the same principle. You are simply creating loops and twisting and looping. Here you're going to have about 5 loops on each side, and then you're going to secure it with a piece of wire. Don't worry too much if it's imperfect. While the ribbon is a very central point, it will be tucked away beneath the flowers, so a little bit of imperfection will not be detrimental. So as you can see, you can add a bit of jewelry here. We have a few silver pieces. This is quite a nice added touch for a wedding, especially if there are accents in your wedding and you want to include those accents in the corsages. So you can take these apart. As you can see, these are already pre-wired, so there is nothing that necessarily needs to be done. They just need to be set aside and ready for use. I am taking a few pieces of baby's breath, and we're going to begin assembling the corsage. Usually when I'm using some filler, I like to mix filler. You can use just a solitary filler, so you can use baby's breath, linoleum, or whatever. But here I am using both. I find that using both gives it a bit more dimension. It makes it a little bit more interesting. So I am taking the biggest leaf that I have, and this will be the back leaf and the supporting leaf. I am placing the linoleum, the buds, onto this leaf, and I'm going to be securing it with floral tape. Make sure that this initial leaf is very well secured, that the stem is thick, because you're going to be hooking your corsage band onto the stem. Then take your first orchid and another orchid and start assembling your corsage. You can place them side by side. And then you will be taking the leaves, placing them behind the faces of the orchid to prop them up, but also to create the fanning effect. As you can see here, you want to be gripping everything together as you're holding it. And once you are satisfied with the form and the shape, you can secure this first layer with some floral tape. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be layering. So don't try to make the whole corsage at once. You will not be able to grip it in your hands. It will fall apart. So take your time and create these layers, these dimensions. As you see here, I have 3 orchids. I added some filler to the bottom. I added the leaves behind it, and I'm adding the accents here, so the silver accents. And this silver accent will create a beautiful fanning effect, and it's quite pretty. So now you're going to wrap this first layer with floral tape. The beauty of the wires is that now you can spread everything out. You could arrange it and fan it out, and it is very easy. Nothing is firmly held in place. As you can see here, the initial leaf needs to be kept loose. It needs to be above all of the other wiring layers. You have to have some room there. You're going to be hooking your corsage band. Once again, you're going to carry on and add the second layer. So here I have 3 more orchids. I'm going to be adding them to the bottom and using the leaves. Now it looks like I'm moving very quickly. If you're struggling, play this video again. And I simply have quite a bit of expertise in this area. So I do it very quickly. You're going to probably have a little bit more time that you need to complete it. Don't worry, don't get frustrated. Take your time, figure out how to do this. Once you get a sense of it, it is very, very easy. So as you see here, I have the first layer of the 3 orchids, and then the bottom layer of another 3 orchids plus some leaves. So in total, here you can see I have 5 leaves and 6 orchids and greenery, a mixture of linoleum and baby's breath, as well as the accents. So if you are creating a pin-on corsage, you can leave the wired stems, and then you will simply wrap the stems in floral tape, and you can bend it into the spiral shape. And you can use pins to attach it to your dress. However, many people, your dress or your suit, depending on who this is going on. However, a lot of people have expensive suits, expensive dresses with very delicate fabric, and they do not want to use the pins on their dresses because it will ruin them. So they opt for a wrist corsage instead. That's not a problem. You can create whatever corsage you want up to this point. So if you want to put it on your wrist, you're going to need the corsage wristband. Putting it on your wrist does spare you the anxiety over possibly ruining your dress or from worrying about it falling off, for example. So this band is incredibly helpful, and it will let you just wear the item around your wrist to easily remove it if you want to remove it, to put it back on if you want to put it back on. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility there. So you're going to be hooking, as you can see, the corsage band has these 2 clamps. You're going to be clamping the top portion and the bottom portion around the wired stems and using pliers to push it down additionally to ensure that it is fixed, that it is secure, and that's not going anywhere. You're then going to use the corsage band and wrap it around the bottom of the wire. You're going to take some pliers and you're going to bend the wires, the excess wires, inwards and over the corsage band. Once again, this gives it an added layer of security, and this ensures that you are not going to have the band come off or fly off. Then once you're finished, you can adjust your flowers, and you can do this at any point in the evening. Should they change position, should they go somewhere else, should they move, you can always adjust it. Then you're going to take some floral tape and you're going to wrap the floral tape around the corsage band and to hide all of the metallic silver, the silver portion, as well as the prongs that are secured to the wires to the stem of your corsage. So you want to hide that all, ensure that nothing is bulging out, and that everything is neatly and nicely arranged. Once then, you can take your fingers, move flowers around, use the ribbon to cover up the band and the silver and the bottom portion. And this is what the final result should look like. Once again, you can play with the colors, you can play with the theme, you can play with the accents. It's entirely up to you. When working with dendrobium orchids, you can usually find an orchid to suit any theme. You can find different colored orchids. You can also spray them if you wish to have a specific color, a specific tone. You can spray it with floral spray, and that will ensure that you have a corsage suitable to your theme. So this is the finished product. Do not worry too much if you're having a difficult time. Do not worry about getting it right the first time. Take your time. Once it is finished, you have a floral corsage that can go on your wrist. It can go facing upward or downward. Here, I like to prepare the corsage the night before and store it in a plastic container, usually in a fridge where the vegetables would go, so the vegetable drawer. Seal it in a plastic container, spray the top of it, mist it lightly with water so that it's hydrated, and store it overnight. This corsage should last easily 48 hours before it starts to wilt or go bad, so you have quite a bit of liberty with how long you can store it. Just keep it in a cool place, keep it lightly misted, and that should give you a very long lasting and beautiful corsage for you to use. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you luck with your creations.